Hey guys, so just for you on Patreon, I'm gonna go over what I'm carrying in my backpack, what I'm using for the Sheltowee Trace Trail. Now, I will do another video after the hike that will be public to everyone else, but just for now, just for you guys, I'm gonna go over what I'm starting with, and then later on we can kind of look at what changed, what I didn't like, what I did like, all those little minutiae and details. Now, for this hike, I'm actually carrying more gear than I ever have on any of my other thru hikes. On more gear for any of these hikes than I have in like 8,000 miles of hiking. Pretty much when I started getting into ultralight backpacking. And honestly, part of that is the filming. For me, heading into the future for this trail and for everything, I would really like film and these videos to become a much bigger part of the journey. And although gear reviews and Q&As are very popular, they're just not that interesting all the time. So I'm hoping I can learn and I can grow and I can film these really nice journeys that I experience, but then also share it with others in a way that is both beautiful, palatable, and hopefully maybe something someone can learn from. I know that one of the reasons I want to do the Sheltowee Trace Trail myself is because I saw videos of other people doing it and I thought, wow, that looks like a really nice trail that just isn't getting a lot of attention. So to start this off, my backpack and my base weight, my backpack, and also including my fanny pack is 7.5 pounds, almost on the dot. 7.5 pounds, almost on the dot. I have my gear list set up in front of me. I'll leave you guys a link to that so you can look through all the little details if you'd like. But 7.5 pounds. That's compared to, on the Pacific Crest Trail, I started off with very, very close to a 5-pound backpack. On the Appalachian Trail, I carried a 6-pound or less backpack, and I get comments and emails and all sorts of hate mail. I don't know. I get a lot of comments saying that, oh, he uses a 6-pound backpack, but there's absolutely no way that's comfortable. Well, I'll just tell you, for me, I'm comfortable. I'm happy. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be using it. I'd buy something else. I'd carry something different. I certainly can't recommend all of this stuff, but, it can be fun to try out for yourself because you never know what's going to work. You never know what you are going to like that may save you an entire pound or a half a pound. I certainly didn't expect that I would be in this position today if you asked me 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. So, anyway, we're going to start going through this stuff. And I'll start with my fanny pack. I order things in my pack, my backpack and fanny and outside pockets based on when I'm going to use them. So if I need it throughout the day, I want it at the ready, right at my fingertips. So this fanny pack is mostly going to have this camera in it. I use a Panasonic Lumix G7, as you can see right here. Panasonic Lumix G7. That's going to be what's filling up this fanny pack for the most part. But I am going to have a couple more little things in there. This fanny pack isn't fully waterproof, so I do have a gallon-sized Ziploc bag in it. I'm going to have a microfiber cloth for my camera lens. Some headphones, because personally I am addicted to podcasts and audiobooks, and I feel, especially out on trail when I'm disconnecting from the rest of the world, it is a good way to kind of stay in touch with certain things or, continue my learning. I listen to a lot of like fact-based podcasts where it's based around history or, just something that I can learn about. I have 2 extra batteries for this camera. I have my little tiny flashlight Very little tiny guy. It only uses one AAA. I've been using this for years. I prefer handheld flashlights instead of a headlamp, because a headlamp, the light is pointing down, and a handheld flashlight, you kind of hold it at your side. What this does is when the light is pointing down from a headlamp, it actually makes the ground look more flat in the dark. So when you're coming down the trail and there's these big rocks that are jutting out, when you're wearing a headlamp, those rocks don't look nearly as hazardous as they are. Whereas when your flashlight is low to the ground, it actually elongates the shadows and you can see the terrain a lot better. So even though this flashlight is not very powerful, it really does the trick. So for the most part, that's all that's going to be inside this fanny pack here. It's really just film stuff, you know, and then I will probably also have my cell phone in there, though I'm really going to be focusing on the video instead of just like cell phone photography or blogging or anything along those lines. So that is my fanny pack, and that is the stuff I will have at the ready all the time. Now, getting into my backpack, the first thing we notice is this Spot GPS device. Something I never really thought I was going to ever carry or want to carry. Safety and well-being be damned. But in recent years, there was someone who cheated a speed record on a very well-known long trail. This person, I guess, just didn't think they would get caught. And anyway, now when you're going for a record, a speed record, or a fastest known time on a long trail, you have to have a GPS tracker that updates live. So when I'm heading out to the trail, I will let everyone know so they can kind of follow my tracks as I hike. But if you haven't guessed, I am going for a record on the Sheltowee Trace Trail. I'm not trying to blow it out of the water. I fully expect the record to get taken down probably pretty soon. As soon as anyone wants to take it, really. I'm not trying to put it out of reach. I just noticed that the current record is not that much faster than I would want to hike this trail anyway. And I don't say that to boast or anything. I just really enjoy hiking all day. I enjoy hiking from dusk till dawn. That's what I like, and I've noticed that I wind up with 30 or more miles every day. So for this record, I really only have to hike an extra hour to 2 hours during my day to kind of seal the deal. Another reason I'm going for this is I work, I have a job, and I can't be taking off a ton of time right now. Things have been kind of weird lately at work. I won't go into that too much, but so getting this trail done a little bit faster is ultimately a little bit better for my working life right now. Now, another thing we see on this pack immediately is I'm only carrying 2 half-liter water bottles. Now, this is all I used on the Appalachian Trail. This is all I used on the Pinhoti Trail, the Florida Trail, and some other stuff. I don't know. I find that I drink a lot of water at the source, and I wind up walking away with a full liter if I feel I need it. And by the time I get to the next source, it's basically time to get ready again. I would never carry this little water for a desert hike, but this is like an eastern Appalachian, so I kind of expect, and I've kind of seen that there are going to be a lot of water sources along the way, so I think I can get away with this. I like the wide mouth bottle of these, and I'm even using these knowing that there are lighter water bottles, and I think we all know I'm very partial to lighter gear, smaller gear, all that stuff, but the wide mouth is nice, and I just like the size of these. I feel like it's a great size, and water is heavy. You know, if I had 3-4 water bottles with like 4 liters capacity, who knows, I might fill them all up and then be carrying an extra like 8 pounds when maybe I don't need that. Maybe I can get away with less. You know, certainly I don't recommend a lot of these things for you or anyone else to really do, but you know, eventually maybe you kind of figure out you can get away with these things, or you want to try to get away with these things. It's certainly not the safest option, but that is a very personal thing. Now, my pack has a lot of pockets on the shoulder straps. I'm probably going to wind up keeping my phone in one shoulder strap and then my flashlight in the other. You know, I'm not really sure at this point what else I'm going to need throughout the day, but that's really what these are for. Anything I want just at the ready. Or I carry my flashlight at hand because when it gets dark, I don't always want to stop and dig through my pack, or sometimes by the time I'm digging through my pack for my flashlight, it's already dark. So just to have that at the ready is a nice thing. So we'll start digging through this here. Oh, I mean, I don't feel like I really need to say, but this is the Palante V2. I've been using it for about a year now, and I really love it. The materials are waterproof, though the seams aren't sealed. So water could get in it, but chances are fairly slim. I do expect a lot of inclement weather on this trail, or at least I'm expecting it. I feel I would be happy and fortunate if it didn't rain a whole bunch. So having kind of like a weatherproof pack is a nice little addition for me on this hike. Now, this isn't full yet, but you guys have heard me talk about this before. It is an odor-proof sack. This is what I will be keeping all of my food in. It is the size 12.5 by 20, 12.5 inches by 20 inches. And it is just part of my overall system for keeping animals at bay. You know, keeping animals on their toes. They have to be really careful when trying to figure out where I'm sleeping, you know. So I only plan on carrying about 3 to 4 days worth of food at a time. I'd say that is my happy place with food carries. 2 days is just not enough time. I want to spend more time in the wilderness and less in towns. So 3 to 4 days is a good medium. I always find myself carrying like 6 days, and then I'm thinking like, what am I doing? You know, it's way too heavy. 6 days of food. You know, what is that, like 12 pounds at the very least of extra food? So I really prefer 3 to 4 days at a time. I have my Frog Togs rain jacket. Oops. This one is pretty darn old, but I'm not too worried. This trail is 323 miles. And I'm expecting weather between, I don't know, I guess between 70 and like 30 degrees. So, yeah, 30 and raining would be bad, but I imagine the 30 is going to be very, very early in the morning while I'll be sleeping under my tarp. So, if this was a much longer hike, I would go out and I would buy a new rain jacket. These are only like $10. You know, I very much like cheap gear when I can. You know, my flashlight is really cheap, my rain jacket is really cheap. A lot of the gear I like to use is really cheap. Instead of using Cuban fiber stuff sacks, I just use these op sacks. Whatever. Now, other than the camera, this is where all my extra weight is coming from. My miscellaneous stuff. Since I am going for a record, I am carrying some extra things that I wouldn't otherwise. On a longer hike where I wouldn't be so concerned about the miles, I could get away with not carrying leukotape or not carrying scissors, because if I happen to get a blister or if I happen to get a fever or something, I could just go into town and spend a day in town getting what I need. You know, it's hard to explain this, but since on this trip, I just have to be so on it every second to get this record, I have to carry a little bit extra to really aid me in that. Now, anyway, this is leukotape. This is part of my like blister control if I so happen to get blisters. I think we all know wet feet and big miles can be a natural disaster. Leukotape is really nice. It's super, super, super sticky, and I just unroll it and stick it on these like wax paper. These are actually like shipping labels where I took off the sticker and I stick the strips of tape on it. So, in conjunction with the Luco tape, since those are just giant strips, I do have these little tiny mini scissors here. I don't know if I can get this to focus, but whoop. Whatever, you guys get the point. These are actually little tiny titanium scissors, which is pretty funny. But the scissors are just going to help so I can kind of cut off exactly what I need of these strips, if I so need it. Or, you know, maybe to help pop a blister, you never know. You never know. I do carry Advil on my hikes. Sometimes I carry Advil and Tylenol just in case things really get bad. Oftentimes, this would be all I would carry as a medical kit. Again, because on hikes where I can go into a town if something goes wrong, a lot of trails, a town is not very far away. It may seem like you're hiking through these vast wilderness areas, but, you know, if I come down with a sickness, chances are I can get to a road, I can get to a town within, you know, oftentimes hours or, you know, at worst a day, 2 days, 3 days. You know, so Advil is generally the only thing I would bring. Anything more serious, then you almost probably need a town anyway. So I have my blister care, I have my Advil. This is another little Ziploc bag. This is what my wallet is going to be going in, or my ID, my credit card, my debit card, and some cash. Just in case, you know. I have my little tiny spoon. I actually, I was washing my jar, so I don't have that to show. It's in the dishwasher right now. So I cold soak my food. I don't cook it. I use a little plastic jar. It's a peanut butter jar. It does not leak. I think it's the Peter Pan brand. And it's about as big as this spoon, and that is what I make my meals in each night. So a little plastic spoon that I had actually cut in half, because my philosophy is if I don't need it, I'm not going to carry it. And I certainly don't need an extra like 2 inches of spoon. You know, it seems silly, but it's just a philosophy I carry throughout everything. It only seems silly for a toothbrush and a spoon. I do have a charger for my camera batteries and an extra cord for that. Just in case I do need to recharge my 3 batteries. Again, filming is going to be a huge priority for me on this trail. Now, an extra cord for my cell phone. For me, in the past, I have used just like 2-inch little cords for my cell phone in attempts to save weight. But I've found, and I now kind of laugh at those that do use those really tiny itty-bitty little cords, is that when you get to town and you only have a little cord, you have to leave your cell phone there. You can't actually use it. So I like to get all my cell phone things done in town while I'm charging, instead of leaving my cell phone to charge and then as I'm leaving town be using all the battery to... Anyway, a long cord is very important. I have this little tiny dual port charger made by Aki. Aki. Come on, camera. Nope. Oh well. AUKEY. It's very small, it's very light, and it does have the Qualcomm quick charge, like 2.4 amp charger. And of course, toothbrush, toothpaste. Again, it is silly to have a toothbrush this small, but again, I can easily brush my teeth with this. I have no problem doing so. So if I don't need it, I don't carry it. So here is the real weight sink. It is this gigantic battery pack, this gigantic external battery. And this is actually a tactic I had on the Florida Trail. I don't know if you guys know, but in 2016 I set a speed record on the Florida Trail. 40 miles a day for 28 days straight. And my strategy for keeping my phone charged was I started the Florida Trail with like 3 of these things. I didn't have to charge my phone once on that trail. So instead of having to stop and wait in towns, I just had these all the time. You know, I could charge on the go. And yes, it is heavy, but what I would do is whenever one of them ran out of battery, I would give it to another hiker I met. You know, and they were probably pretty happy to have a dead battery, but something that they can charge up in town. So by the end of the trail, I didn't have any of these left. I'd given them all away, but I didn't have to charge my phone once on the Florida Trail, which I thought was pretty cool, because charging your phone takes a long time, and when you're going for a record, it is time not well spent. So this is RAV Power. Normally, I don't really like the RAV Power batteries, but this monstrosity of a battery is actually pretty nice. This is the 20,100 milliamp hour battery that they make. It does have multiple ports to both plug in. It has multiple ports to plug out of, and it does have Qualcomm quick charge and all that good stuff as well. So this thing is monstrous, and I don't think I will have to stop in town at all to charge my devices when using this. So ultimately, carrying the extra, I think this thing weighs a pound. It's crazy, but carrying the extra pound is worth it in this sense. You know, if this was a longer trail, if I wasn't going for the record, I don't think I would carry this. Now, the last little things in my ditty bag here. Starting out with a couple extra, 3 extra AAA batteries here for my flashlight. Again, because I don't want to have to stop and buy more. I want to have everything I need pretty much from the start other than food. So 3 extra AAA batteries. And the last little thing in my skincare, foot care, is a safety pin. So just a small safety pin to help with blisters. And that is my entire ditty bag. I do not use stuff sacks for anything. I only have this one Ziploc bag for all of my miscellaneous stuff, and then all of my clothes and the rest of my gear is just loose inside this pack. So again, I pack my pack based on when I'm going to need this stuff throughout the day. All of this little stuff, I may need it at some point during the day, you know, the Advil, the foot care, the spoon, whatever. So I keep that right on top. Now, next up, well, I had my jacket right on top, but anyway, next up I have my tarp. It is a 7x9 Cuban fiber tarp. It is very, very light. I used to use a poncho tarp, which might be lighter in certain circumstances. You could ask me more privately about that, or in the comments section if you would like to know why I switched away from a poncho tarp to this one. It is 7x9. It is a big rectangle. I love it. I've always loved tarp camping. It's a wonderful experience to me. Now, I use Polycro as a ground cloth. It's definitely not as durable as Tyvek, but you know, it's alright. It's super cheap and super light. Super cheap, super light. That's something I'm all about. I have my jacket here. Honestly, work screwed me up a little bit, but I was expecting to do this trail like last month. I'm sure I had mentioned to some of you, I was thinking like I don't know, mid-March, late March, or April 1st. Now I'm starting mid-April. So I was expecting things to be a little bit colder. So this jacket is a little bit beefy. But, you know, I think it'll come in handy because my quilt is a little bit flimsy. My quilt is rated to like 40 degrees. So to have a nice jacket that I'm confident in and comfortable in, I'm pretty happy with. Maybe in future hikes I'll get away with something less, but I do really like this jacket. It is the Noonattack PCT, and I believe it weighs 10 ounces. Again, for all of the weights and the specifics on some of this stuff, I will leave the gear list in the comments or the description of this video. Now, since I'm sleeping under a tarp, and I'm pretty darn exposed, I'm not going to be using a bivvy. I thought about it, but, you know, I'd really like to just use a head net. So, for this hike, when I sleep, I will just be using the head net. I won't have any other sort of bug netting. I think a bivvy is a fine option most of the time. Or honestly, most of the country is desert, and you don't really need anything at all for desert. So, you know, it's just Eastern Appalachia and, you know, northern part of the U.S. So I think this will be fine. It's certainly not like the most comfortable option, but it is really lightweight, and, you know, I'm not Jupiter because of no reason. I'm Jupiter because I like to push extremes. You know, and sometimes I get crap for pushing extremes, but you know what? Someone has to. And I have certainly done worse buggy hikes with absolutely nothing. So I'm very happy with just a head net as my bug protection. So I have some wind pants. I very much so like wind pants. I don't really use tights. If I was hiking in much colder climates, much colder trails, or like 4th season, I would carry tights. But these wind pants are made by Montbell. They are expensive, but I've liked them. I've heard you can buy like like pants for dancing that are maybe made out of like nylon that would be extremely cheap. I'd have to look more into that, or you could look more into that if you're interested in them. But wind pants, they just basically add, you know, like a couple extra degrees of warmth and cut the wind. You know, wind chill can be very damaging to my mental health. So to have a couple extra degrees of warmth, even if it's raining, and these dry incredibly fast. It's crazy how fast these things dry. I could be hiking in a downpour all day, get under my tarp soaked, and these will be dry in like minutes. It's awesome. A little bit expensive, but I like them. I've been using them for a long time. So a lot of this stuff, I've definitely gotten my money's worth out of. You know, I've been using a lot of this stuff for like 6,000, 8,000 miles, so. I do carry a little beanie. My jacket, as you saw, does not have a hood. I like the more modular system of, you know, I can just take the beanie off, put the beanie on, whether I need it or not. Whereas like a hooded jacket, it's always there. You know, sometimes I may want the beanie, but not the jacket. I think you see where I'm going with this. So I have a nice little beanie. I will have one pair of socks on my feet and then another extra in my pack that I will just kind of rotate in between. Since I am expecting a lot of like river crossings and wetness on this hike, I did consider carrying 3 pairs of socks, but you know what? Again, I've done worse with less. And that's part of the that's one of the great things of going on a lot of training hikes in really bad conditions. I think you guys know I like to do that. I like to go out in a thunderstorm. That's like the best time for me for a quick camping trip. Because I get to learn. You know, if I'm always going out when everything is good, I never learn. So I've done longer hikes with only the 1 pair of socks that are on my feet, so I think 2 pairs of socks will be just fine. Yeah. I use These are actually really thin Walmart nylon dress socks. They cost like $5 for 3 pairs. Yeah. They're definitely not the most durable socks, but again, they're pretty cheap. I like them, you know. I am carrying some gloves. These are the Z-Packs Possum Down gloves. I wish I could find a different pair that I liked as much, or a different pair that kept me as like warm, that was synthetic. You know, whether these possums in New Zealand are invasive or not, are taking over New Zealand or not, I don't really care. I wish I could find something different. Anyway, these gloves are very warm, they're comfortable, and I do like using them, other than where they come from. So we're getting down to the bottom of the barrel here. I have my quilt. I briefly mentioned it's rated down to like 35 or 40 degrees, so it's not super warm. I do have a warmer quilt that I thought about bringing, but you know what? I think this one will be fine. Even though it's only rated to like 40, I've brought it into the 20s and have been for the most part okay. Into the 30s and have been like comfortable. I had this in the Sierra last year and I was comfortable with it. I've had it in the Smokies in like October or November and was fine. So, you know what? I like pushing the extremes. For this hike, I am using a pack liner. I did not carry one on the PCT. Again, if you don't need it, why carry it? It doesn't rain on the PCT, and if it does, it's going to be very short-lived. This trail, I am expecting rain, so a pack liner. This one is from Mountain Laurel Designs. You can obviously just use a trash compactor bag, but I find that these actually last pretty long. I usually replace them like every 1,000 miles, but I think you could easily get 2,000 or more out of them. Unlike the Polycro ground sheets, those rip pretty quick. Or they can if you don't baby them. So, yeah, pack liner to keep everything, all the contents of my backpack dry. Now, we do have my sleeping bag, the thing of great controversy, or my sleeping pad. You can see it's extremely thin. I don't recommend this to everybody, but you know what? It works for a surprising amount of people, so you know what? I'm still gonna talk about it and love it myself. It is definitely not the most comfortable thing by itself, but that's a huge part of like ultralight backpacking or backpacking in general, is oftentimes you can replace carrying extra pounds or half pounds by just gaining a new skill. So the skill in this place that I'm replacing pounds for, you know, an extra really heavy sleeping pad, is campsite selection. If I spend an extra 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes each night looking for a really nice campsite, then hell, I don't even need this at all. You know, this is just for those times where I can't really find the perfect campsite. If I can find a campsite that has like a nice plush ground with like leaves and grass or whatever, just undergrowth and a nice soft ground to lay on, I don't even really feel like I need the sleeping pad. If it's really cold, this is nice to take the edge off. And that's really what I have it for. But, you know, and it's not just about sleeping on plush ground, it's also, I don't sleep on the tops of mountains, I don't sleep in the valleys, I hardly sleep by water. These are all things you can do to have a warmer night's sleep. Obviously, sleeping near water, that's where cold air collects. Sleeping at the tops of mountains, you're going to be hit with crazy winds and just like... So, you know what? A lot of people give me a lot of crap about this sleeping pad. I think it's perfectly comfortable the majority of the time. Well, that's almost everything, folks. There is one other thing here, and that is my tent stakes. I use these Z-Packs carbon fiber tent stakes. I don't know. I don't know exactly. Are they worth the money? God, no. You can buy. You can buy Walmart tent stakes that are even more stable and not quite as light, but good enough. I had bought the Z-Pax carbon stakes because at this point I have all the gear I could really ever want, and you know, only every once in a while do I get something new, like the new jacket or the new fanny pack. These weren't super expensive, so I thought, heck, you know, I'll just upgrade one of the last pieces of my kit, and that was these tent stakes. So Z-Pax carbon fiber tent stakes, something I do like about them is that they're actually pretty darn thick. So they will actually hold into the ground, into the soil pretty well. Way better than a shepherd's hook tent stake would. So I would choose these over shepherd hooks any day. Now, I'm only carrying 5. I only have 5 guy lines on my tarp, 5 points to kind of pitch that tarp to the ground. And for me, especially for a short trip, that is enough. I would like some extra guy lines on there, at least like 1, but it would only make the tarp more comfortable. It wouldn't add to its structure. You know, it wouldn't make it more structurally sound. It would just be a bigger space underneath. So 5 tent stakes. Now, that is my entire pack. I have not packed any food yet. I have all my food sitting over there, and I'll kind of think about that. You know, I'm leaving in like 3 days, so I have to work the next 2 days, and I've just been incredibly busy lately, so just trying to get things done. Anyway, all my food is bought. I just haven't really packed it up yet. There is one other thing that I am changing for this hike. And I'll talk about it briefly. I'll do a full video on this like some other time because I do think it's important. I think it's interesting information, but I definitely need to test this out before I start preaching about it. You know, I don't really want to make a video on something I personally don't understand thoroughly, because that would just be disingenuous and not right of me. So anyway, I'll just talk about it here with you guys for a second. I'll go test it out, research it more, and then come back for an official video later. These are the shoes I've been wearing. I love these shoes. They are made by New Balance. I can buy them for $40. I love that. The one issue with these shoes is they are extremely minimal. Like you can see, I can literally roll this shoe up into like a ball without much issue. It doesn't have the most amount of structure. And a term that some of you may know, some may not, stack height. Stack height is the distance between the ground and where your foot touches the sole. These have, I believe, an 11 millimeter stack height, basically all the way through. That is very minimal. There are a lot of hikers that use even more minimal shoes than this with absolutely no trouble. Okay, stack height, minimal shoes. Minimal shoes are wonderful for training because they will actually work more muscles in your feet and strengthen your feet in training. But going out into the field, if any of you are triathletes or Ironmen or marathon runners, you know way more about this than I do, but you probably train in one shoe and then race in a different shoe. So that is essentially what I'm doing for this hike. I've been training in this super minimal shoe, and then for the hike itself, I will be having a slightly thicker, more rigid shoe. I can't really, you know, this one has more rigidity. It's got much more like cushion in it. So I'm hoping that this will help me get through those long days because I'm done training for this hike. I don't need to strengthen my feet further during this hike. I just need to protect them during this hike. So I went with the Ultra Superiors. They are still incredibly minimal, but one thing about them is that they do have more cushion than the New Balance. While the New Balance has like an 11 millimeter stack height, these have like a 25 millimeter stack height. Again, it's small difference, but I can really feel it just walking around in them. I wish I had more time on these before I started, but you know what? For those of you that have been following me forever, I used to wear Ultras. I've gone through like 20 or more pairs in all of my hiking in all of my life. Just in my closet, I have like 6 old pairs that are still there, still just waiting for me to kill them once and for all. So I'm comfortable with Ultra. I've been using them for a long time. Now, something I have noticed is that Ultra are advertised as these incredibly wide shoes. These big daddy of the shoes, these wide shoes for wide feet. They really aren't that wide, man, seriously. One problem I notice immediately with these shoes is that my feet feel a little bit tight on the 2 sides. So although my forefoot feels okay, it's very tight on the sides, and that sort of worries me, but I feel they just need to be broken in, because a lot of shoes feel that way off the bat. I did try a bunch of different sizes at the shoe store. Now, if you seriously have wide feet, then these New Balance are the jam. These are way wider than Ultra, which is hilarious because Ultra is the one that's known for it. Anyway, so I'm going with these Ultras. If you are transitioning into a minimal shoe or thinking about Ultras because you see that everyone and their brother and their mother and their grandfather wear them, test them thoroughly. Ultras are not for everybody, and it blows me away to see everyone wearing them. Not everyone is ready for a zero-drop shoe, one that has no difference in height and stack between the front and the back. That is going to work different muscles in your calves, different muscles in your feet, different muscles in your legs. And a lot of people experience a lot of pain when they first are using these, or even get injured. Ultras are not for everybody. You have to ease into something like this if you're not already accustomed to that style of shoe. So that is kind of my piece of advice. And anyway, that is all of my gear for the Sheltowee Trace Trail. I know this video is long, but I really wanted to give you guys the entire bit of information. You know, again, I will be making a shorter video after the hike that kind of just hits the highlights, and then, you know, probably individual like reviews of certain pieces that I either loved or certain pieces that I absolutely hated. You never know. That's why I do these things. But anyway, you've got the full story. My total pack weight is, or my total base weight for my pack is 7.5 pounds. Let's see 1 second. I want to say 2.5 of those pounds. 2.8 of those pounds is electronics. How ridiculous is that? But you know what? I really want some nice video. You know, I really want to come out of this with like a cool project and something that is going to help promote the Sheltowee Trace Trail. That is a big goal for me. Is, you know, everyone wants to hike the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, whereas not a lot of people have heard of something like the Sheltowee Trace, even if they live in Kentucky themselves. It's the same deal with the Florida Trail for Floridians. It's incredible how many people I meet around here that are going off to hike the Appalachian Trail that don't even know the Florida Trail exists. So something I made a mission of a long time ago is promoting the Florida Trail. And I've seen that firsthand with my website. I wrote a little guide book or guide to a certain section of the Florida Trail that has gotten like 1 million hits over the past 4 or 5 years. And I've seen the numbers personally. I used to not see anyone when I was out hiking on the Florida Trail, no matter how often I was out there. Now I can't go out there without seeing another person. And oftentimes those people recognize me. Or after the fact, send me an email like, oh my gosh, you're that guy that... Anyway, you know, again, not trying to boast, but I recognize that I have this following, and this following can do good. You know, it's brought funding to the Florida Trail. It's brought new volunteers to the Florida Trail. You know, it's brought more hikers, which in turn bring better benefits and more points to lobby with to get more funding for the FTA. And, you know, so I'd really like to kind of help out with other trails in those regards by just showing them off. You know, that, hey, I'm not going to hike the Appalachian Trail. I'm going to go do this hike you haven't heard of in Kentucky that's really cool, or this hike in Kansas that's really cool, or Arkansas, right? You know, these places, they're not vacation destinations to most people when really they could be. You know, especially Kentucky, from what I've seen, it's actually known as one of the greatest places in the country to go rock climbing, which I guess is Red River Canyon. Some rock climber's gonna hate me and correct me, but yeah, so there's a lot of cool places out there that aren't the AT or the PCT, and I kind of just want to showcase that a little bit. You know, I'm sure I'll come back to those other trails at some point. But, you know, I recognize I can help in other areas, and I would like to. So, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know gear talk is good talk. I personally enjoy it, and I hope the extra explanations for you guys is useful in some way. You know, anyway, thank you guys for your support. It means a lot to me. It seriously, seriously does. I put a lot of time into these videos I've been making, and it really means a lot to know that others enjoy it and others want to see more of it, you know, so thank you guys. To those of you that have gotten little art pieces from me, I hope you enjoy those too. You know, those are things that normally I would sell on my website, but you know, for anyone that enjoys it or anyone that wants it, by just becoming a member on Patreon, you can get one of those paintings for $5 instead of, you know, 20, 30 plus. You know, and I guess the one caveat is you don't get to choose what you get. So some of you have gotten little beautiful mountain pictures, and others have gotten, I don't know. But it's been really fun to paint those things for you guys, and I hope you have enjoyed them. So anyway, thanks for watching. I have more to do, so I'm going to get to that. Bye.